If you had to tell one story that summed up who you were as a person, who you are for sure as a person, tell that story.
When I wake up every morning, I try and be more efficient than I was yesterday, and I try and be less of a piece of shit than I was yesterday. So if I can get answers to those two questions, I come out a better person at the end of it.
You can't put people in buckets, right? We all are a culmination of our experiences in our past and stuff like that, but we all have a brain, which kind of makes it hard for us to put anyone in a bucket because everyone is vastly different.
Welcome to No Universal Answers to the Universe, a video podcast and interview series with Taylor Hall and Kenneth Givens. Today, our guest is Randy LaMons. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, man. I appreciate y'all for having me.
So as you all can see this week, we've changed up a little bit. Randy's here in person with me at my home. I won't tell you where I live, but I do throw great parties. So if anyone's interested, hit me up. Randy, if you wouldn't mind, just introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us what you've been up to for the last couple of years.
So Randy LaMons, like Taylor said. I graduated from Georgia Southern in 2016 with
Hell Southern.
a public relations major. Took a couple years off school and decided I wanted to go get my master's in counseling. So right now I'm at Augusta University and I'm going for mental health counseling or clinical mental health counseling. Getting my master's, man. And also personal trainer. So if anybody needs training in the Augusta or Grovetown or Evans area, hit me up.
Yeah, so after we post the episode, we'll make sure we put Randy's tags to different social medias and stuff like that, so anyone can get a hold of him if they want to contact him about personal training or even talking to him about what we talk about on the show. So we'll dive into that a little bit. What do you enjoy most about being a personal trainer?
Well, it kind of started senior year of high school where I had weight training and it was like really, really fun. Just like working on myself and, going through that mental struggle of like pushing through all that soreness and pain and stuff. And then, seeing the results in the mirror, obviously that's like the best part. But so then we went to Southern and I kind of kept up with it. And, y'all other friends started asking me for advice and help and stuff. And I was like, well, I might as well make this into like a thing I can get paid for instead of giving out advice for free now. So I think, it was around this time last year. It was like early September where I took the test and got certified officially. And then like that next month, started working at the Y. That gave me an opportunity and I've been there ever since. And I just started at Gold's Gym too. So overall, man, it's just it's a fulfilling experience to see people or help them meet their goals and kind of encourage them to do better and teach them along the way.
Yeah, so a personal story, when I tried out for the basketball team, we had to go through conditioning over the summer, and so they'd pair big guys up with guards so that like the guards would push the big guys to keep up and everything like that. So I'm proud to say that Randy pushed me further than anyone had ever pushed me at that point in time, and we finished first on everything.
That's what I do.
God, just about everything you can think of, stadiums and stuff like that, like pushed me to finish first.
Competitive, man. Competitive.
So he's very encouraging. He won't let you quit. That's probably the biggest thing. So as far as like being a personal trainer, you now work at the Y. You also work at Gold's Gym. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming you have varying levels of difficulty with your current trainees. Is that correct? So like you take on new people and you're working with people who have worked out before as well, or kind of walk us through that, the difference in how you handle different types of new trainees.
So at first it was tough because I wasn't used to working with somebody that hadn't like ever stepped foot in the gym or lifted any kind of weights at all. But, luckily it was easier for me to adjust to that. And I just had to kind of, tone it down a little bit because I'm used to working with people that are more athletic. And you can't take a 45-year-old woman that has never, exercised at all and just put her on some insane program. So now I'm like a lot better. So now the process that I go through, I just kind of ease them into it and still challenge them and, push them and make them better and just introduce new things like session by session. So it took a little bit of time. I didn't get it at first, but now I'm definitely a lot better than what I started with.
So now I'm going to ask you, how do you think learning those lessons of working with people who are at different levels, mentally and physically, how are you going to be able to now turn around and apply that to your master's degree and what you want to be in the future? And then tell us a little bit about what you plan to do with that degree in the future.
Okay. So, well, now I'm at a point where I do try to apply one thing that's could be potentially, totally opposite to the next thing in my life. So with that, it's like, well, me, I want to work with kids. So of course you got child till young adult, which is a range of ages. So it's just thinking on their level. And like in class, we talk about like, what's the term? It's like stage theory. So like whatever age they're in, that's the stage their brain is in, like developmentally. So you just have to put that into perspective when working with that crowd, So let's say you're talking to a 6-year-old kid, their brain isn't going to be developed enough to understand certain concepts and like abstract things. So the same way with somebody that has no background with, gym experience or anything like that. So you got to basically come to their level to figure out how you can reach your goals. So, yeah.
Diving into that a little bit, as you go from stage to stage through development, how do you as a trainer change how you motivate people? Do their internal kind of locus of motivation change as they grow up, or do you have the same approach kind of broadly across the scale?
So it depends on how the session's going, honestly. So if I see them kind of like, kind of slow or lagging behind a little bit, I'm like, okay, just kind of remind them why they're doing it in the first place. But if everything's going good, I still encourage them to say, you're doing it great. It's been a great session today. You've been doing amazing. Like, even if I make my corrections and like whether they're doing the form wrong or, not going as fast as they can. Sometimes I say as fast as you can to pick it up a little bit. When they get done, I say, hey, you picked up on that like extremely fast. So just like little motivators and encouragers along the way, just to keep them going.
So you use like positive reinforcement on the people who are at least trying their hardest or putting forth that effort.
Yes.
And then you said with other people who are starting to lag or fall behind, you go back to why they're doing it specifically, right?
Like why they signed up in the first place.
Right. So I'm assuming there's an original session that you go through where you find out from them personally why they're starting to work out or why they want a personal trainer.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't even have to ask. They just like bring it up by themselves and say, hey, I got these health issues. I don't want to be that person that can't move in like 20 years. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or like all kinds of other health problems like high blood pressure, anything like that. So, sometimes they just need a reminder like we all do,
Right. Okay. So like you're going to take your degree and you want to be a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
So what kind of counselor do you want to be? Do you want to work in schools? Do you want to work in the private sector? Like what kind of things do you want to do? And then tell us a little bit about your experience and what made you change paths.
So I want to start out as a school counselor, but so there are 2 tracks at AU. So you could either do school counseling or clinical mental health counseling. At first I was going to just go straight for the school counseling, but I thought about it for some time and I didn't want to be boxed in. So I feel like that mental health degree would, I could be able to expand more, let's say if I didn't like school counseling in 3, 4, 5 years. So I could then veer off and do my own thing, possibly open my own practice and get licensed and all that. So, yeah, so start out in the school. And if I don't like that, go ahead and get licensed and everything. But what was the other part of your question? I forgot.
So you started off with your undergrad degree was in PR.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of tell us what changed your path and kind of tell us about your experiences. Me personally, I know you worked with Chris, your brother-in-law, but like walk our listeners through that process and what made you change your mind.
Okay. So, well, first I had to change to PR I was accountant, which was a whole nother story in itself. But so, yeah, ended up my back against the wall, low GPA, not focusing on anything. So I was forced to change the PR. And in that, I had to refocus, basically evaluate myself on what I'm doing here. I'm already a year behind. Like I can't. I'm on academic probation. I'm not finna get kicked out of school. So changed my focus. My first professor for my intro to PR class, she really helped me out. Shout out to Miss Mallard. I don't know where she is right now, but she really got me on the right path. She just emphasized the fact that you need to do more than just go to class. You need to get involved. You need to be a part of the community, especially in this field, in the PR field. It's public relations. It's
Right.
in the name. But yeah, and like I said, I just took that mindset and applied it to other things in my life. So with that, I tried to do as much as I could in the little bit of time I had left at Georgia Southern with the PR degree. So, I got involved with the PRSSA, that organization. I did the civil engineering club just to, get experience in different things so I could basically add it to my resume and have more to talk about. But yeah, and in that, I kind of found a passion for advising other people on, which path to take and how to find out what path to take instead of just wasting 2 years and, getting a low GPA because you don't really care about what you're doing every day. And at the end of the day, you're wasting time and money, which is you can't get your time back. You can get your money back, but at that point, you're in a whole lot of debt if you were in the situation that I was in. So, yeah, I just found a passion for that. And now, it led me to counseling. I work with Chris, like you brought up, which that really helped me out a lot because it gave me that one-on-one experience. So whenever we are talking about like communication skills in class, I can reference back to, my sessions that I had with those elementary, middle school, high school kids and kind of like, oh, I should have done this instead of the way I did it. But back then I didn't have the knowledge that I have now. So it still gave me that good experience that I can kind of refer back to sometimes.
Right. So with Chris, you were meeting with a handful of kids who were, for lack of a better term, I hate using this term, but they were troubled youth. There were kids who were not excelling in all areas and all fields across the board, whether it's academics or behavior or their time management, stuff like that. So Randy would meet with those kids. Was it once a week?
Once or twice, depending on how severe the case was. So mostly once a week, though.
So your terminology here, were you considered at that point a case manager? Or?
In a sense, yeah. It was my official title was community support individual, which has various meanings. That could be the same thing as what you just said, but yeah, essentially it's all same concept.
All right. So with that being said, and talking about like what your experiences were with that and kind of what you're walking through right now and experiencing in school, what kind of, doors are you hoping to open and what, like at the very base granular level, are you hoping to accomplish in the community?
Just to get people thinking about what they really can see themselves doing for the next, 40, 50 years. Because essentially we all retire around generally the same age group. And leading up to that point, can you really see yourself waking up in the morning every single day doing the same thing? And I want them to realize that it's impossible to make that decision at 18 years old after you graduate from high school. It's like you have no idea about anything else in life. How are you going to make a decision that you're supposed to, you're supposed to pick your career, the thing that you're going to do for the next 50 years when you just graduated from high school and you couldn't even wear a hat in class.
Right.
So, you got these things that restrict you so much and this like set schedule that you're on with these restrictions and stuff. And it's, like I said, it's next to impossible to really know. So just to try to get them to open their eyes a little bit and get somewhat of experience while they're in high school so they can kind of have an idea what they want to do and then go from there.
Get those gears turning. So real quickly, Randy is Ruben's brother. Ruben was our first guest on the show. And Ruben also brought up the fact about, becoming an adult. He realized that I can wear a hat every day if I want to. And then Randy brought that up. So I thought that was really funny. But I guess what I want to talk about that you just said, which is terrific, is, me and Taylor have had this conversation several times. And we talked about it a little bit before we recorded with Alex about minimum wage jobs and what you can actually afford on a minimum wage jobs. But no one tells that to high schoolers. No one tells that to middle schoolers. And they oftentimes say, go to college and you'll make more money. But no one ever puts numbers behind it that'll actually open the kids' eyes. And what always kills me is, you got to select your major immediately going into college.
Mhm.
Sometimes they'll give you a year or two, but that's like all the time you have. But what they don't do is they don't set up enough, I guess, job shadowing opportunities for kids in high school, right? We have a capstone project or what was called a senior project when we were seniors in high school, where you had to job shadow people. It only requires you to job shadow for 40 hours. And a lot of times, kids get that pencil whipped and they don't, necessarily take advantage of that.
Right.
And like me, I did my senior project on coaching, Little League baseball. So it had nothing to do with my career path, right? So what kills me is they want kids in college to go through internships and co-ops, but they don't offer that normally until your second year, your third year, until you've declared your major. But now if you go on an internship or a co-op in that fifth semester or after, and you decide it's not for you, you're now changing, your major, you're lengthening the time you're in school by a year already.
Right.
We should all, obviously, as a community, do more to get high schoolers out in the job field and just job shadow people. What do you do on a daily basis? You don't have to pay me for it. I need to take time out of my day because, quite frankly, if you spend 40, 80, 100 hours as a high schooler job shadowing and it helps you make the right decision, you're now making the right decision that will affect you for the next 40 or 50 years. Right. So I absolutely think that there is a need for this in all communities.
Exactly. And with that, in high school, a lot of them, well, I feel especially in Grovetown area, don't have jobs in high school.
Right.
So they have nothing but free time. And the biggest thing is they don't need money to survive right now because they're still with their parents and they feed them, take care of the gas, phone, all that. So they have the ability then to work for free.
Right.
So they have literally all the time after 3:30 after school to go get that experience, whatnot, So they really don't have any restrictions. They just have nothing but time at that point. So,
and I think it'll solve multiple issues. I mean, kids or even sometimes young adults, I can tell you I was one of them. If you give us free time, we normally do something stupid.
Yeah.
All right. We're normally not being productive with it. If we were and I hate using the word forced, but if we had a program in place that encouraged and really promoted and made it a positive thing for these kids to be job shadowing in the community, you're accomplishing two tasks. You're getting them off the streets and away from all that free time that sometimes allows kids to make poor decisions. And then B, you're also accomplishing the goal that they're now able to make decisions that help, shape them for the future and decide, what career path they want to take. For me, I think it's something that me and Randy are obviously working on currently. So we started a foundation called the Be the Change Foundation. And, we're really excited because we're offering our first scholarship this year. But realistically, the point that at least for me, and I think Randy's on the same page, that we're trying to get across is we're going back to our community, okay? And we are giving back to those kids. But it's more of a, hey, we've been there. So if I whatever, trying to reinforce positive, change, if I show up there and I say, hey, I've been there, I've been in trouble, I've sat in the seat that you sat in, we both have, and look where we've made it, right? Randy's getting his master's degree, he's working 2 jobs, and he is making it. I am living an hour away, and I'm working in a job that allows me to travel a lot and allows me to see the country, and, affords me some pretty nice things. And to say that, you don't have to quit and you don't have to go work at McDonald's, right? It's just like what we talked about with Alex. But the difference is you can see people on TV who donate money and who have all this money and stuff like that, but they didn't come from where you came from.
Right.
We came from where these kids are at currently.
Literally.
And I think that is a big difference, right? You actually see people and your immediate response isn't, well, they don't know my life. When they see us, they're going to be like, oh, these guys have sat right here in this room, and I think that's a huge difference. We need more people who are making it, returning to those communities and reinforcing that, hey, you can make it. Don't give up. Don't quit. We've been here and now we're here,
Because kids recognize authenticity and they can smell the opposite a mile away.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And we're skeptical. I mean, how many times have we sat, Taylor, you were homeschooled, so it's a little different, but Randy, how many times did we sit in a gymnasium in middle school and high school where there was some random dude who was like, had to go from school to school giving a speech about not drinking and driving because he killed a kid 20 years ago and he's in prison and he's on a prison release program that allows him to give speeches.
Yeah.
I don't even know where that guy was from, but we heard him twice. And I'm just like, yeah, I get it. I don't care about this guy. No offense to anybody, but I just, as a kid, selfishly, I was like, I don't know this guy from Adam. So, and that's not me and that'll never happen to me. Right. But it does happen to people. And what you need to realize is it can happen in your area. But I don't think we get enough people returning to their communities to talk about things like that. Right. Because then the kids see, this guy grew up on my street, or, there's a kid right now that goes to our former high school that lives in the house I grew up in. So like, there's literally connections that you can tie to these people. And I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And so when people talk to me about it, they ask, why we started at Grovetown. I'm like, well, we went there. And it's crazy because I can still go back today and still talk to some of the teachers that I had and, get them to tell their kids about it. And I got some of their phone numbers right now that I'm like, hey, remind them the deadline's coming up or stuff like that. So it just the fact that we left our mark on the school and people remember us for being good people, I feel like that definitely helps us and has helped us in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Taylor, for you, since you obviously grew up differently than us and you were homeschooled, what would make that connection for you? You asked me and Randy, but what would make that connection feel real for you as a kid?
I guess relating to some of the struggles that happen at that age and that are unique to that age, kind of the middle school and high school stuff, and trying to offer solutions in a perspective that fits that. It's very easy to forget where we come from as we rapidly age through high school and get thrown into everything that the adult world is. Right. And that's something that I struggled with in the early years of camp before I really got into a rhythm there, was trying to go back 8 years, 9 years in my head and remember what I was dealing with and try and push these kids to succeed in a language that they would understand, appreciate, and respect. Yeah. It's not an easy thing to do.
Right. And I think that's what I struggled with at camp. The reason I would tell my life story to those kids is a lot of those kids their families have more money than I will probably ever amass in my lifetime. Right. Or even the people that are right now in my apartment and you, Taylor, will ever amass collectively in our lifetime. No offense to anybody. They're rich. They're millionaires. Right. And I want to be there one day. Absolutely. But the likelihood and the percentage is not in my favor. But trying to get on the same level as those kids, all I had to essentially show them is, they immediately think you're cool because you can do what you do, right? Like the kids knew you as the IT guy, and you were a wizard with, CPUs, iPads, and that stuff. They knew me and Denzel and X as athletes, and we're up there playing sports on the field or on the court, stuff like that, and they immediately gravitate to that. But then you share with them that you grew up with nothing. And then they start to realize and they start to turn those gears in their head that, hey, this person that grew up with nothing is still a cool person or is still a good person. And the kids can make that connection because a lot of times later on in life, people with money but a lot of times from my experience, look down on people who don't have money. But if you can, hit that, stigma early on in their lives and change that for them, you just got to find a way to level with them and get on the same page as them, like you said.
Right. I think the fact that we're younger kind of helps us out a little bit. So I'm trying to get on it, do a little quicker because we're not doing that. We're getting older right now. So get it while we still can relate to them on somewhat of a realistic level.
Still in our 20s.
Yeah.
Right? Once we become, hit that mark where we're in the 30s or especially in the 40s, they're just
nah, we're losing them.
No, yeah, these guys are old news, So Randy, we'll get back onto our topic. You had talked very briefly about the struggles you had in undergrad in the beginning. Mm-hmm. You obviously turned it around. You were on academic probation. Kind of walk us through that period, how you turned it around, and what really motivated you to be successful.
Oh, well, like I said, it was really self-reflection, and I didn't want to have to go back home and say, hey, Mom, I flunked out of school, while my friends were still, getting their education and working towards their degrees. I didn't want to be the guy that got kicked out. So, I mean, I'm all against comparing yourself to somebody else, but at the same time, they say it's important to have good people around you. So since I did have those good people to push me to be my best, it kind of made me look in the mirror and say, hey, I got to keep up with these guys because I can't have Denzel successful, Kendall successful, me drop out of school, or get kicked out of school. So with that new motivation just kind of stuck with me. And now it's in a different way now than then because thank God I'm not on academic probation right now because that would be a whole nother mess. But just going back, I don't want to work with my back against the wall. Even though it kind of pushed me from behind, it could have easily stopped me. And because I feel like in that situation, it could go either way. And for me, I'm lucky enough to have that motivation inside of me and that mental toughness to push myself to do better, to push myself to stay focused. So now I just keep that focus and motivation to help me reach my goals that I have now and help me, read 10 pages every day when I definitely don't feel like doing that. To go to work, to have 2-3 jobs at a time. Cause I used to have like 4 jobs at one time. There was a point in time where I had like 4. So just that motivation, man, it's been pushing me ever since then.
So would you say, and this will be good perspectives for anybody that's listened to Alex's episode, he flat out said that, he encountered an issue in high school with grades. Mm-hmm. And then he said he started out in college on the wrong foot and he did not learn from his lesson originally. He's now learned that lesson and he's learned it the hard way. Yeah. Would you say on the flip side, you learned your lesson and you haven't looked back?
Yeah, exactly. Like I did not want to have to go through anything like that twice. And I wouldn't wish it on anybody. That's why I stress the fact that I want to talk to these younger kids, these kids in high school, and say, hey, man, think about it before you get there because it's harder trying to figure it out when you're in it than before you step foot in it. Right. So just have some sort of idea of what you want to do.
Start that pre-planning process.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay. So then you went on to graduate. You're now working on your master's. Outside of that situation, like in the gym or when you're working on like personal hobbies and stuff like that, do you draw your motivation from the same past failures, or do you draw on a different type of motivation for those things?
So you mean like things in the gym, or
like when you're working out in the gym, and is it the same for when you're trying to accomplish personal goals at home, whether you're working on any sort of projects like with our foundation and stuff? Like what, is it the same thing that's driving those things? Is it different? Is it different for each phase of your life? What are those motivations?
So there is kind of like my therapy. Okay. Instead of like, trying to reach those goals and stuff. Yeah, I did make a few, gym goals. And as far as like, lifting a certain amount of weight or weighing a certain amount of pounds or whatever. But in there, it's a chance for me to kind of beat on myself and clear my head and like get ideas for things. Because I think about other things that I'm doing in life while I'm working out. And just to have that escape from it, but still be able to think about it is very helpful to me. Because there was a point in time a couple of weeks ago where I was so caught up between work and, school and everything where I skipped a few days. And I felt it. Like I started feeling anxious. And like I couldn't sleep at some point. I was like, man, I got to go to the gym. And after that, I just felt a lot better. And it might seem like weird or corny or something like that, but I feel like everybody should have that thing that they can do. That's part of the reason why I got my anchor tattoo. I think people should find their anchor and have that thing that they can, escape to and kind of help clear their head and help them think about life, essentially.
Yeah, I'm gonna make that a roundtable topic for me, and then I'll ask Taylor. Like my anchor, and I've talked about it on the episode a couple of times, is like my reading. When I read, I absolutely get to escape, and I get to escape to a whole new world usually because of the type of books I read in fantasy. But absolutely, and I've been using that, for years since I was in middle school, and I started reading big fantasy books and stuff like that. Really late elementary school. So like that's my anchor, right? And I think that is absolutely important. And we've talked about it. We've never called it that, but that's a terrific thing. Like Randy, if you want to show your tattoo.
Yeah. So it's just where's the camera? It's just an anchor right there, and it kind of goes all the way around my wrist. So yeah, just like.
So yeah. So like finding your anchor in life is very, very important. Taylor, you want to share what yours is?
For mine, harkening back to our very first episode, it's music because it is such a personal and emotional thing to be created. It
Right.
allows me to get out of my own head and get someone else's perspective on whatever the particular topic or issue may be. And then I can return to my own universe with that first perspective.
Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, that's pretty cool. Like we have, the first time we really talked about that in a deep dive, we have 3 different anchors. And I believe that for anybody listening to the show, finding your anchor, it could be anything. Like Ruben said, for him, it was walking, just simply going for a walk, trying to get out of his own head. So, I mean, something as simple as that to reading a book. I mean, Randy works out and obviously he's very, very proficient at that. If you follow him on Instagram, you'll see he's built like a Greek god. But for Taylor, it's music. So these are all things that like at anyone's own pace, they can try, right? You can always go for a walk or you can get out and sit on your porch even and just listen to nature. Or, you can listen to music, you can read, you can go to the gym, regardless of what level you're working at. So I think that's really, really important. So past that, we've talked now about your motivations. We've talked about what you're working on currently. What are some of your like most successful moments? If you had to boil it down to like 2 things or even one thing, what are the most successful moments that you've experienced thus far?
Well, it's more intangible.
Okay.
It's just the fact that I've reached this point of focus and dedication to what I'm doing and figuring out what direction I want to go in life. Because like high school, freshman and sophomore year of college, go with the flow, really down for whatever, no really direction. I was kind of wandering and floating. But now it's like 2 totally different people as far as my mindset goes. So to me, that's my biggest thing because I know how I used to be. And like I said before, I could have easily just, stayed the same. It's tough to change. It's tough to get out of those old habits and start doing something new. But I'm just glad I had, like I said, that mental toughness and focus to be able to change my ways and notice that the pattern wasn't what it needed to be. So that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, so that's 2 weeks in a row now, Taylor, that we had somebody who said their most successful moments is intangible things. So that's pretty cool in my opinion. Actually, maybe 3 weeks ago, because Brandon's wasn't really tangible. He had, obviously he had mentioned that, being successful in that competition on the, making it to the national stage, but he was very intangible as well. So I mean, that's neat how people look at things differently and like mine was absolutely tangible. And then when you guys started talking about these things like Alex and Randy, you started to think about other things in your life that don't have a trophy to go along with it.
Yeah.
And how important those moments are. So when you were going through that process of change, you mentioned that changing is not easy. Part of this podcast is for us to be better people on a daily basis, like Taylor says in the intro. Mm-hmm. When you were going through that process of change, were you taking it one day at a time? Were you setting up steps? Were you setting miniature goals? Or was it just I need to do something different, and then you tried out new ways to change your path, throughout the process?
So actually, well, you have to take it one day at a time, because for me specifically, if I think about the grand big picture, I get overwhelmed. And that's the times where I get anxious and, have those panic attacks and, think about, man, I got so much I need to do. Where do I start type thing? So for me, what got me on that path is just, picking up one thing at a time. So it started with working with Chris, actually. Okay. So that kind of got me on that path of the whole counseling field and everything like that. Then he suggested I started working at the YMCA as a camp counselor.
Okay.
Because the clients that I was seeing, it was mostly during school. So during the summer, it was really slow. He was like, hey, you might as well, it'll be best if you pick up a summer job and kind of gear it towards children. And then, I'm so thankful I picked up on that because, one, it gave me experience with kids aging from range 5 to 12. So that's a whole lot of personality. That's like 70 kids. I know y'all had y'all big camp too, but that's 70 kids at one time, 5 days a week. Our shifts for 5 hours long. So just dealing with that environment really taught me a lot about myself as far as, obviously patience, right. But my leadership capabilities as well. Because I've never been one to, kind of step up and take charge of everything. But in that situation, you kind of have to, especially with kids, especially with the little ones, because they can just run around all day and it just be pure chaos. But, you know, to organize it, you know, you be the leader of everything. And the fact that they liked me, like I know a lot of people don't care about how other people feel about them, but I'm in a situation where I feel like I have to care how people think about me. So that was really important to me. So all that together, you know, working with Chris, being a camp counselor, and now, you know, being in school, it's all coming together now.
It's all steps in the right direction.
Yeah, it's steps. That's exactly. All you have to do is take those steps. And I'm not saying it's easy, because you definitely going to need help doing it, because I had my help. But things start going smoother and better once you take those steps. So one day at a time, extremely important.
So would you say as you get along, you start, like you said, things start becoming smoother, the next step becomes easier.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
first step's always the hardest,
Mm-hmm.
and then things get easier as you go along. So it brought up a good point about being around kids and learning patience and stuff like that, and you were kind of out of your element per se.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So we talked with Alex too. You know, it's always a phrase that people throw around a lot. When you're uncomfortable or when you're out of your element, that's when you grow the most.
That's the biggest change.
So would you say you grew the most during that period?
Oh, yeah, because especially with public speaking, you know, that's everybody's biggest fear, public speaking. I had to stand in front of 70 kids at one time and explain how to play a game. That is terrifying for the first time, to say the least. So just so many thoughts and emotions running through your mind while you have to stay calm and explain something to even children.
Right.
Because sometimes they can be the biggest critic, you know?
Yes.
So, yeah, it's just being uncomfortable in that sense. Now I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. So
Right.
now, like right now, one of my biggest goals is in class talking more, because in undergrad, I'm the guy to sit back and just, you know, wait for the 50 minutes to be up, write my notes and go home. But now, like I said, I made it a goal to speak up when I have something to say, ask a question when I have a question, talk to somebody sitting next to me, ask them how their day was, you know, just doing more that's involving me being not myself, you know,
right.
Out of my element.
Right.
So now I'm definitely more comfortable with it.
So would you say too, when you're making those distinct decisions to be outside of your box, be outside of your element, you know, before there had to be some level of fear pushing you to not do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you say now that you've started doing it, none of those bad things that you thought were going to happen have happened, right? No one laughed at you when you asked them how their day was going, right? They responded in kind and then asked you how your day was, right? So, you know, people build these things up in their mind, these stigmas like, oh, if I try to talk to this person, they're just going to immediately shoot me down.
Right.
That very rarely is the case.
Rarely.
Yeah. So, Taylor, I'm going to ask you this too. So when you were at camp at the very, very beginning, I remember, you know, I think we talked about it on a previous episode, seeing you, and you looked like you were so uncomfortable. Can you?
Because I was.
So, what helped you get out of your shell, and what pushed you to maybe not get fully comfortable being uncomfortable, but at one point in time you went into a cabin and you were a cabin counselor. So like how did that process work for you, and do you feel like you grew from it?
Oh, absolutely grew from it. It was a long and strenuous process. I remember putting off being a camp counselor as long as possible, knowing that I would have to be the leader of a captive audience for a while. But it's funny, the whole public speaking thing in front of kids, because I was just reminded of the times we'd have to get up on the tables and do announcements. Yeah. As a coping mechanism, being an introvert and being a shy person, I use humor as a disarming tool and to break the ice. And you can't do that with kids, because if you get kids laughing, you lose control of the audience, and then you have to spend more time getting them back than you would actually saying what you got to say. So completely having to retool myself was the growth process that kind of got me through it. And then on the interpersonal, not with the campers, but with the counselors, it was getting to know and befriending people like you and Tisha Mason that I saw as the unapproachable cool kids, and realizing that you guys were still cool, but also human, being able to work through it and relate to people that I thought were essentially out of my league for interpersonal relations kind of built me towards being able to be a more confident person all around.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've never thought about that. That point you brought up about the kids and you know, me personally, I use humor all the time. If I'm ever in a situation, it doesn't happen very often anymore. But if I'm in a situation where, I am uncomfortable, I immediately try and make the people laugh. And if that first joke lands, I'm great. If that first joke doesn't land, I am in trouble. I'm then reaching for every other joke, and normally it gets dirty. So, like, that's my route. And I'm fortunate that a lot of my first jokes land. But I've never even considered that. With kids, you absolutely lose them if you get them laughing. Mm-hmm. Like, especially young kids, you get 7, 8-year-old kids, you can make them laugh about anything in the world. They're immediately going to go to like fart jokes, and they're just going to keep it going. And it's like, now I've lost them. Like, what do I do? And you're not really like a person that I would consider confrontational. You're not going to be the one that yells to get the kids' attention. So you really have to be captivating,
Yeah, no, I remember the one time that I probably had the joke that landed the best was when I was announcing a Magic the Gathering tournament, and I stood up on the table and as loud as I could say, "Hey nerds, listen up." And the crowd lost it. I loved it. Yeah. But it's one of those things that only worked once, unfortunately.
Right. And that's what was funny about all those other people at camp too. Is like they find something that works for them. I'm sure you found something that worked for you, Randy, mm-hmm. to get the kids' attention, and because you can lose them very, very quick. And I think that helps all of us learn patience and responsibility. Because like you said, you're staring down 70 kids, mm-hmm. and you're now the person in charge.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see that and to see people change when they work with kids, because not everyone gets the opportunity to work with kids, which I think is crazy. I think everyone should have to work with kids because it teaches you so many life skills outside of that, right? So, mm-hmm. I mean, me as a manager, we always joke around that being a manager in construction, you're just a glorified babysitter, because, you break down onto a very basic level when you start to argue and stuff like that. You've got to see reason, and you're now trying to be that patient, counselor that is captivating their audience so that they can get them to talk and make a decision, right? So, working through, we now work through your undergrad, you're in grad school, we've worked through your motivations, worked through your successful moments, worked through how you've changed. But let's go a little bit further back. How have you changed since high school? How have you changed since middle school? Like, try and tell us. And then after you tell us about that, what advice would you have for middle school aged Randy? And what advice would you have for senior in high school Randy?
So for middle school me, I would say get out of your comfort zone as early as you can.
Okay.
Because ever since I started doing that, things have gotten a lot better for me. And those challenges you conquer from that, nobody can take that away from you. And to me, you gain skills that you normally wouldn't have if you never tried to, face those challenges. So get out of your comfort zone as early as you can. High school me, senior year, just do more. Do as much as you can. Get involved in the community if you can. Just get to know people. I mean, I feel like I had a pretty good social life in high school, but just as much as you can, even with the teachers too.
Right.
Like, even so, because I mean, I can still go back today and talk to some of my teachers that I had, like I said, but you could always do more. So, just like I said, just overall do more, talk to more people, get more relationships, and get a job. Work more, get a job.
That's a good one. Before we move on to the end of our show, Taylor, did you have anything you wanted to dive into with Randy or talk more about?
Yeah, to your advice to your middle school self, getting out of your comfort zone, at least for myself with the whole very self-enclosed homeschool environment, I can't say I had a comfort zone at that age. How does someone that's still finding themselves figure out where they can push themselves to grow that's not going to stretch them too far at that age?
Well, I would say just try to experience as much as you could. I know being a kid, you're kind of, restricted to what your parents allow you to do. But, it's nothing but to ask. All you have to do is ask, hey, Mom, can I try this? Hey, Mom, can I try that? Hey, Mom, what do you suggest? I'm trying to do this. I want to get better at this. Can I get involved in that? Because they're the person with, 1, the money, and 2, the transportation that you need.
Right.
So, yeah, just depending on your parents, that's a whole nother conversation as far as like parenting and stuff that we can get into another time. But yeah, just getting involved with your parents and getting their opinion on what you need to do, because they've been your age,
Right.
and they know what it's like somewhat, because things change obviously. But yeah, just getting their opinion on things, I feel like is very important.
And you brought up a good point. Thinking about it now, like for me, I was a class clown type individual. I tried to always be funny and stuff like that. But there were absolutely things that I could have done as a middle schooler that I tried to do when I was at camp. Right, like I'm scared of heights, so at camp every year I would climb to the top of the rock climbing wall. And each year I would try and do like a more difficult side of the wall and make my way up there. And I did that every year at the beginning during orientation week. And like in middle school, absolutely, I was still scared of heights. But there was other things I was scared of too. And eventually I bridged those gaps, but absolutely could have started sooner and become a more well-rounded person earlier on in life, right? Made those changes earlier on and try to make those steps. There's absolutely times I remember in middle school, like the middle school dance. I didn't know how to dance, but I didn't try either, right? I just hung out off to the side, wearing my basketball jerseys with the matching hats.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I did, stand out to the side. And it was a place where we could get away from home and just hang out with friends. But it absolutely should have stepped outside of my comfort zone and tried to dance, right? And now I could care less if people think I can dance or not. I go out there and I try it, you know, and if I look stupid, I look stupid, because now I've gotten to a point where I don't care what people think, but I could have absolutely done that a lot sooner.
So I'm surprised to hear you say that, because at that age, the songs were coming out. You don't have to dance. You just pull up your pants and lean back.
True.
Absolutely. They played that song 2 or 3 times.
So we've discussed where you want to take your school counselor and possibly to more of a professional licensed counselor. But what does your 5 and 10 year plan look for personal goals? What do you want to shoot for when you're not on the clock?
Oh man. Does owning a gym, is that a part of being on the clock?
I would say
I'm all for that.
Yeah, I think that's a personal goal, because that's not counselor related.
Okay, cool. Because yeah, I've been had this dream of owning my own gym and training my own, clientele, which I do want it to be around, high school age athletes, but obviously welcome to all age groups. But yeah, just owning a gym, and I haven't put a year on it yet, but that's the big one. Like that's when I can sit back and say, yeah, I'm proud of myself for this thing specifically, because this is my thing.
Right.
And that's probably the biggest one right now, aside from graduating and all that, of course. But yeah, just opening up my own gym.
And then you have some pretty big plans or thoughts that we're going to be working on in the next year for the foundation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for that, just expanding schools and the reward overall. So just getting our name out there, trying to spread to other schools in Columbia County, and just doing more in the community for that. So getting involved with back to school drives, maybe have a speaker or two come talk to the seniors at the schools about different career fields and career paths and how they got started and internship possibilities. Just trying to keep the kids in the community informed about, like I said, what they need to be thinking about and focused on and potentially doing, because they have all this free time.
Right. And with that being said, I think we brought up some good points here. And I've now, over the last couple of days in the retreat I was at, have found out new ways that we can help kids that I've never even thought about before. Right. We had talked about starting some sort of class during the warrior period, right? Mm-hmm. Where, people or somebody would come in and show you how to like balance a checkbook and like write checks and, put together a resume and stuff like that. Right. And it got shut down because the high school feels like they're preparing kids for college, and we've got to understand that not everyone goes to college, right? We want them to, we want to push them for that, because that piece of paper, although it is still a piece of paper, is worth a lot of money. And we all know that, having experienced it, it gives you opportunities and opens doors that you couldn't open without it. But if we could have professionals in the community spend one day a month or come in on a Saturday and teach like financial literacy to kids and teach balancing a checkbook and like filing your taxes.
Yeah, basic life skills.
I still I go to somebody to file my taxes because I don't trust myself to do it because I don't know enough about it. And like it would be helpful to go to, and I'm 26. So like doing that with these kids, I think would be helpful and create a very positive change and impact in all of their lives. And I think as a foundation, as we expand outside of just offering scholarships, if we start offering these kids opportunities to job shadow, we can also offer these kids opportunities to have professionals provide, training in areas that they won't receive at school.
Right.
So, you have anything else for us, Randy, that you want to ask us?
No, not really, man. I'm just thankful y'all invited me on here. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Appreciate y'all's time.
Thanks for joining us, Randy.
Of course, man.
So our send-off, how do you put Randy LaMons into 3 to 5 words? How do you summarize yourself and your impact in just a couple of terms?
Focus, strong, mentally and physically, not just one. So strong, honest, very honest person. So yeah, those 3: focus, strong, and honest.
There you go.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you all for joining us on this episode of No Universal Answers to the Universe. We'll catch you next time. No Universal Answers to the Universe is an interview series by Taylor Hall and Kenneth Gibbons, which releases on YouTube and all podcast platforms every Monday. If you have any questions or would be interested in being a guest on the show, please contact us at nouniversalanswers@gmail.com or via our Instagram page at no_universal_answers. Thank you for listening and have a great night.